Hi everybody, this is Dustin with Utah News. We did want to bring up a good article with you today. Actually multiple, kind of blended since it's on top of everybody's mind here lately. It is immigration. I know it's not something we want to keep pounding into the dirt, but it is on everybody's mind. The whole Tom Homan and deportations, everything going on with the new administration. But with that being said, on this one is going into just immigration itself overall with Utah nationwide, whether it's documented or not documented. And we do have some articles, and this goes back way to 2011 even, when some bills were put through by Herbert when he was in office, I believe. It was like HB 116 was one of them, and I'm not going to read it all, of course, to you, just so you're aware. You can go look it up. It is Part 10, which is the 76-9-1001. This goes into the Illegal Immigration Enforcement Act, okay? Back from 2011, so good to look into. It just goes into a lot of the definitions behind ICE, alien, deportation, being a citizen, documentation, getting them IDs or whatever it might be from a state government official, and going into law enforcement stops. So it covers quite a bit, but it does have to state that these have to have a valid driver's license issued on or after January 1st of 2010. A lot of that, whether they're documented or not, it's kind of hard to get those documents. So we do want to cover into that a little bit more here. But I do encourage you to look at it. I'm not going to go read into it a bunch. Legal jargon, it gets into your head, and it's not that fun to read. So do look it up if you have an interest. But we'll go back again. 2011 up to current, immigration has always been on everybody's mind, more so probably lately than others. And we'll get into statistic there. But a lot of it, too, is the burden everybody faces. So there are people out there that just say, in general, that it's not much of a burden. I'm happy to have them here, and they produce a lot. A lot of ways they really do. If you look at it, the industries that I see most of them working, and this is just observation, I'm not going off statistics myself just yet. Agriculture, manufacturing, construction workers. A lot of them are in the trade industry as well, and they're hard workers. I've personally worked with so many immigrants through the years, and I can't say if they're legal or not, just so many immigrants that are so skilled in these areas, and they're just hard workers, so I have no complaints about that. But again, it's a lot of work out there that they have these jobs in specific areas. So they do contribute, and this goes into one side of it, the burden on taxpayers. This article itself comes from Familia America, so it is a legal website, I believe, that covers services for illegal immigration or just resources, try to help them through the process. And it does cover into that burden on taxpayers, while saying that some argue illegal immigrants are a burden on taxpayers since the government spends a lot of money on these workers and they don't pay any income taxes. They believe that the implementation of new immigration laws can save American households thousands of dollars. Okay, well, particularly, especially if they're not paying income taxes, that's an interesting argument. The other side of it says that about 5.4% of Utah's workforce are undocumented immigrants. It's a fairly high number. They pay about $10 million in taxes each year, both to local and state tax agencies. Okay. And it does say that sales tax, other purchases supply about $77 million worth of that funding as well, saying that they do contribute probably more so than they use. It's a fair argument, I guess you could say. But it does go on later in that article, going into criminal records, deportation, processing on what it actually costs Utah. So it does say that now other studies show that 6 to 9% of the inmates in the state are illegal immigrants, okay? Illegal immigration issues are costing Utah all around about $353 million per year. And this is an older source, so definitely go look at that itself. But being that it is an older source, $353 million, but they're only putting in $77 million through purchasing products, sales tax, and potentially Utah local taxes in general. Okay, there's still a big difference there. So even though they might be covering some, it's not a ton. And we go into that HB 116 a little bit. It's separate from what I read initially, but this one is specific to the new worker permit law in Utah. Quite a bit. And this one with HB 116 passed 2013, okay? And this is going into addressing the illegal immigration issue. So it says, with its passage, provided a path to legal residency to those immigrants either living or working in Utah. I'm not going to go into the whole HB1 conversation here. This is just Utah. Now, with HB 116, the undocumented immigrant may apply for a guest worker permit, so it's like a visa here. The individual seeking that permit must pass a criminal background check, which is good. If that person entered the country illegally, but subsequently did not comply with those laws, he or she must pay a $1,000 fine. If they enter illegally, the fine shall be $2,500. Additionally, proof of health insurance must be provided. Okay, so that, it's kind of a catch-22 on that. You'd figure if they came in illegally and don't have health insurance, obviously, how are they going to have health insurance? It does cover that initially, of course, because they could possibly be working here already, just they're not documented and illegal, so they might have insurance through where they're working, however service they got it through. So that's what they're saying, is as long as they do have that and start going through the process. Now, with that, it does say there's a big issue here. Utah, as a state alone, cannot address immigration law without the approval of the federal government. This goes into the sovereignty clauses, of course. We talked about that with our land ownership segment a week or so ago. 70% of our land isn't even ours. So that whole sovereignty issue is, why do we have to have federal oversight over a local issue, or a local issue with federal oversight? It gets complicated all the way around. But that's where that worker permit law goes into effect. And another one that comes into play, and this is a hard one to look at, is one of 11 states, and this goes into the whole legality. Now, if you might be familiar with law, there's misdemeanors, felonies, of course. Now, when deportation comes into effect, typically it's because of a felony charge that they go in, okay? Now, on this itself, it does state that a felony charge in the state of Utah was typically a sentence that had or carried at least a year or more of incarceration. So 365 days. There was a bill that was passed that changed all of that here for Utah, kind of slid under the rug. And this was in an ACLU commentary. Utah passed a law to protect non-citizens from automatic deportation. Goes right into that. And all it did was change a lot of these laws that were up to a year of sentence, but they changed it by a day. So it's no longer a year, it's just 364. So it could be a crime that would substantiate a year sentence and be classified technically as a felony, but by reducing that day and a maximum penalty of 364 days, it's now still a misdemeanor. So technically a minor crime, I guess you could say. But that goes in 11 other states. I know there's Colorado, New York, quite a few others, and the whole article on that from the ACLU just states, should your state follow along and do the same? But now it does say that before it was passed, the defense counsel would sometimes mistakenly advise their non-citizen clients to accept the misdemeanor plea deals, not realizing that the consequences would trigger removal because of that year tally, the 365 day. So it's, again, allowing them to stay when honestly they're illegal. That's a crime in itself. So, take that for what you will, make your comments, but it's a little sly under the rug there. Now, locally in Utah, I do want to cover some statistics just for you to know. Look them up. Feel free to do so. Some of these are older, and then some of them are newer, so I'll try to read off the dates as I can. And this one is from Axios, Utah. The article itself is from November 30th of 2023, okay? Quick little chart about our undocumented population declines, which is great, but it goes in historical. So 2005, it does show about, that's an 8. So about 4.6 to 4.8 of our population was undocumented or illegal. Okay? Relatively, what do we have now? 3.5 million people in Utah. That's not horrible, 4.5%. And it does show that down to 2020, it was roughly 3%. Okay, that's a nice decrease in general, so that's a good thing. Now, in other statistics, if you look at it here more current, under the Biden administration that has been leaving, it went up to 9%. That's a big increase just in 4 years, where the previous statistic was over almost 15 years and 2% drop, and then in less than 4 years went up 7%. It's a big increase. And there's another one here, it goes just into statistics of who they are, where they are, what they're doing for work. Like I mentioned before, large portion of them are in, there we go. Yeah, we've got manufacturing, construction work, good percent of them, about 47% of them are in that area, or agriculture, which, again, they work well. But it also goes into the population here that don't speak English, speak English a little bit, speak only English, etc. It's a surprising statistic to me on this one, just in general, and you can look these up too. This one is from the migrationpolicy.org website. Now, in speaking English not well or not at all, about 35% of that group, and again, mind you, we're not being biased here on any particular group. They could be Korean, they could be Indonesian, India, Russian, Swedish, okay? So just keep that in mind. We're not singling out any particular area. This is just undocumented immigration. But yeah, 35% of all of them don't speak English, or not very well at all. And then the industries there, as I mentioned before, construction, one of them is food services, art, entertainment, recreation, manufacturing, and some even in the retail trades. And well, obviously, retail is a big one, selling products. But construction was the number one, about 20% of them. Okay, and that's good. With the type of workers they are, that's great. Now, here's one that hits home for me on a personal level, and take it for what you will. Everybody's situation is a little different out there. Now, everybody resorts low income, middle class, etc., or the one percenters, as it were. Now, if you look at income levels, what does it mean to be middle class currently in America? A lot of it shows that it might be $100,000 or more per year to be middle class right now. Everybody's talked about the price of eggs, but how many of you make that much? I know I don't, but that's a good amount of money to be making. Now, on this note, why I mention it is just in economics in general, the income level, and it goes into poverty level. Now, I don't know about you, and I haven't looked at it recently, so I may be wrong. Don't quote me on this, but I believe poverty level is somewhere around like $21,000 a year, or 25, somewhere around there. I know it's gone up a little over the years, but the poverty line, where you pretty much don't have to pay taxes, things of that nature, is fairly low. But it does state on this one that more than 44% of the undocumented population is above 200% of the poverty level. Okay, so should that be at that 25, 28, whatever I mentioned before, of that level, they're about 200% of that at least. So they're probably making what a lot of us middle income earners are making in general. That's quite a bit of money, and they have no documentation to be a citizen. So we're all making about the same, it sounds like. But in going forward with that too, we'll go to just some local news sources here because of the burden question that came up earlier. And it goes again to that question of where are they getting services from? How is this happening? Utah, other states start offering health insurance to immigrants who don't have documentation. Okay. Well, sure, we all want to be healthy. We all want our kids to be healthy and safe. That's great. Be able to go to the doctor, provide for that. Anybody that's gone to a hospital as of past 5-10 years, they always have those forms if you don't have insurance to have financial aid available or payment plans, and those are always handy as well. I'm not sure all the services that are out there anymore. But now a growing number of states, this one says, is opening taxpayer-funded health insurance programs. We'll get into that part about a little bit, but again, taxpayer funded, so you're paying for their programs. Now, it's 11 overall states, including DC, considering DC is not a state, provide full health insurance coverage to more than 1 million low-income immigrants, regardless of their legal status. Okay, at least on that one, it does state there may be some legal as well. But that's still quite a bit. I mean, 1 million families are taxpayer dollars are going towards. I don't know about you, but that seems like a lot to me. Now, it does say the cap on that program is $4.5 million a year and limits enrollment to about 2,000 children. And then there are premiums that you have to pay for as well. But those are no more than $300 a year. How much do you pay in health insurance? I know for anybody, especially with a child, you're looking probably anywhere $300-400 a month just for your insurance, and that's through our traditional programs. Okay, so costs no more than $300 a year. That would be fantastic. And preventive services, not preventative, but preventive, are covered in full. Wow. Okay, so that's quite a bit, but this was in our Salt Lake Tribune, so you can go look that at as well. And California was the first state to do that. So again, follow California's trends, what they do. I know under certain items that happened past year or two, what was it? They were bringing in about 20,000 or giving assistance to families to buy homes. I know we covered some of that for Utah. Utah followed suit and provides that same type of offer to immigrants to buy a home, or first-time home buyers is how it's labeled. But some of those programs are more so for allowing immigration to buy homes. Okay. I'm just going to say that. And it goes into the 11 states here. So like Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, D.C., Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and Jersey have some of that similar coverages around. It doesn't give me specifics. I'm just listing these off. But wow. And there is a statistic on here, but goes into the different states and how much they actually provide. And we are... Okay, this isn't comparative, but it's just showing you the actual amount of people that are covered in this graph, California being the highest, of course. And it does say states are expanding coverage to people living in the U.S. potentially without authorization. Some of them, like Utah, are imposing enrollment limits to control the spending, which is good, again, but it is still your taxpayer dollars, my taxpayer dollars, that are funding this program. Can I write that off? And now in going through with that, I mean, sure, I will completely pound this one to anybody that knows me. I love people, as long as you're good people. I like immigrants. Everybody came from somewhere. I mean, even my ancestors were not in the United States, okay? Go far enough down the line, nobody really was from where they were from. So it just goes that line. But as long as you're good people, yeah, we want to take care of you. Sure, America is the land of immigrants. Bring us your poor and you're hungry and you're tired is not on the Statue of Liberty. But again, it's not to be abused. That was the point. And so, moving forward, is one of the big topics here I wanted to do. It's kind of going to be a segue between some of the positive topics that the ACLU was stating, that they actually cover themselves. They're not really a burden to the taxpayer. And this one goes into, I guess you could say, the sanctuary status, to use that word. People have heard that for a little while now, and I know some places like California, in certain cities, are changing their sanctuary status, etc. And this is just a headlined article for Center of Immigration Studies that Utah is the stealthiest and reddest sanctuary state. That's actually the headline of it. This is on CIS.org. You can go pull that article up. This is from July of last year, okay? Now, it does offer sanctuary to illegal immigrants. That's just the headline of one of the paragraphs here. Now, the state-sponsored benefits are also supplemented by none other than the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Provides assistance to all immigrants regardless of legal status, food, housing, employment, legal, spiritual, and other support. Okay, we all know Utah's well known for that one, of course. Bring in quite a few immigrants through the years through the missionary projects. We've all known that for years in Utah, so ultimately not a bad thing. Now, if we go in further on this, now the next paragraph or section, I should say, in this article is the Utah way. Do it while denying it is the headline. Kind of a catchy article line. I like that. So now the Utah way of doing something while denying it may be traced back to a time when members of Utah predominant religion, the LDS Church, covertly practiced polygamy. Again, it goes into some history about that one too. But a lot of that too, we've heard, never existed, or so we've been told. Okay. Now, there goes into a whole blurb on a blog that was in there that it's a stealth sanctuary state. This is October of 2023. Now, there are illegal immigrant-friendly policies in Utah, and this was written that in border cities and states were to very publicly transport illegal aliens to Utah, it would expose the Utah way on illegal immigration for what it actually is, a stealth sanctuary state program. On the other hand, if they were to do it quietly without fanfare, they would be fully consistent with the Utah way, and Utah could continue to welcome illegal aliens with open arms and still deny that it's a sanctuary state. And that's what this article goes in to say, is it actually has been happening. I think everybody heard about the Aurora Project, what was happening in Denver, etc. And quite a few immigrants were being flown to Utah from Denver. And no fanfare, no publicity, so there's not going to be an argument. Okay, now what's concerning on this down further in this whole article is that the officials are not tracking non-citizen arrivals, okay? And again, this goes into some fiscal year statistics. 2020, it says new proceedings that were filed in Utah court for immigration, okay? This is just new proceedings. 2020, 1,300, okay? That's not too bad. 1,300 cases or filed cases, that's not bad. We'll just jump 2 years ahead so I don't read every line. In 2022, 11,000 cases. That's a big increase. Now from there, it then since doubles. If you look at 2024, and this is only as of June 2024, because that's when this article came out, was around that time. 20,000 by June of 2024. That's quite a big increase just in 4 years. So you can't really say they weren't coming in, because all these filings actually show that they were coming in, just nobody's freely admitted it, have they? Now, there's 19 legislative actions that are going in to end the sanctuary status of Utah. And I could read off all of them, I'm not really going to, but one of them is like requiring all Utah employers to enroll in E-Verify. I know that one's coming up here shortly. Basically requires them to validate and verify the citizenship status of every immigrant or hiree they have, basically. And also making the use of false IDs a felony instead. So again, that would go past that 364-day rule. It would be an automatic felony. And requiring state agencies to develop programs that identify children 12 years old and younger whose social security numbers are being illegally used by audits for employment and other purposes. Notify the parents, investigate, maybe criminally prosecute, depending. I know identity theft's always been huge. How do I get these social security numbers? Well, could be somebody that they filtered out from one of these data breaches from a company somewhere. I know we all get notices of that. We also had, what was it, last year or the year before? It was, I believe it was 2024, where they claimed a hacker had gone into the Social Security Administration's website and obtained how many, if not everybody's social security number? And go look into that one. I don't know the full details. And it keeps going. I'm not going to read every one of these for you here, but there are 19 of these legislative actions that are supposed to be going in. So it's good. And one of them is formally disavowing the Utah Compact. And they have that in headers here. It goes into a whole article on it. And call for it to be rescinded since it serves as a magnet for non-citizens to migrate to Utah. I would agree. Go look into the Utah Compact. And it's huge. There's 5 principles that go into it. A lot of people have signed off on it. It's a whole other hole to dig if we want to go in there. But it does talk into some items that are associated with none other than the UN, maybe UNICEF. We can talk about that more another time if you'd like, but I do encourage you to dig into it. And with that article going forward, just some other statistics and interesting things that are happening overall with that immigration stat. And one of them this is huge, and this goes in back to that ACLU article I was reading earlier, is in regards to what it costs to house immigrants or migrants, whatever it might be. And this one is just from New York Times, or New York Post, sorry. I want to make sure you get the right one here. And it is published from 2024 in August. And this one states, and this is supposed to be nationwide, $150 billion in taxpayer funds in 1 year. I don't get that much money. But and this is saying that last year, so the article is in 2024, so it's stating for 2023, okay? $150 billion in government services and support to help the 20 million illegal migrants in the country, according to the study is from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR is the acronym, and most of the cost is by state and local governments. This is a whole other topic, but if you don't know already, governments, federal, state, or local, they actually don't have money. It's your tax dollars. So just keep that in mind. Now, it does go forth in saying that with that cost of, you figure everything that's being paid for, okay, we've covered healthcare already. Now, what about incarceration? How much it costs to keep somebody in prison, whether they've been an immigrant or not. I remember 2018, I want to say, roundabout, I believe the statistic at that time was somebody incarcerated on a major crime was about $60,000 to $70,000 a year just to hold them as a prisoner. So figure, if there are those that have come here and have committed a crime, aside from being illegal, which is a crime, if they're incarcerated, they're being covered. The food, the welfare programs, housing costs, the health care that we just discussed, and it's being provided. So they are actually costing us quite a bit. It does have a graph down here, and this one I would like if our producers could show that, obviously California with the size it is, $30.9 billion in those costs. That's insane. And it goes on into the top 20 states. You get some like Tennessee that's around 971. They're in the top 20 though. And now Utah here, of course, we're a little smaller than some, so I would figure we're not in the top 20 it shows, but I would figure we're probably pretty close. Maybe 21, 22 at that, 750 million or so. That's a lot of money going out the door to substantiate immigration and out of your tax dollars. Now I know, just offhand, topic-wise, look at your car insurance. You figure, and I'm not going to go into full details here, this is just general knowledge, but they have what's called actuaries that go ahead and project out what costs of insurance are for a particular risk model or risk group. Now, if you've got a certain group that upends that and really changes what the statistics are going to be, say you've got X amount of people that do or don't have insurance or enough insurance to cover it, but they also don't know our laws or how to drive, and they're causing quite a few wrecks, that's going to cause other people's insurance to skyrocket. And I'm not saying that's the full reason, but I'm just giving you an example. So that's another way that you end up footing the bill for things that aren't necessarily your fault. Insurance rates go up, and this is only one reason. Again, may or may not be fully connected. I'm just saying, take a look at it. And last on this one is just the generality, is the cost of it. Like I mentioned, that $150 billion. There's another article of Newsweek talking about the same thing that came out just February last year about the $150 billion in 2023. And that's just insane. And that one goes into contextualizing the numbers as well. And there it's more listed. So similar states to ours, like Idaho, Wyoming, Vermont, gives you their GDP and respectively of what it may cost each one of those states. But that is just, it's a big topic, and it's an important topic. We've got a lot of immigration happening. We've got everything going on with the new administration, Tom Homan. And again, I repeat, good people are good people. We want you here, sure. Assimilate, be an American. But it is an issue, and we definitely want to know your opinions down below. Please comment. I'd like to hear your opinions all the way around, especially this story, other stories you'd like us to do. I'm glad to be with you and talking again, and I apologize for the delay from last week. We'll try to be a little bit more regular, but we have a personal life too, so as much as we can, we'll bring you what news we can. We love you. You have a great evening.